The sandbaggers all have remained silent about Gail Burson. That's what earns them the category sandbagger. For those who knew and shared Duvall's sentiments of approval of the AIDS attack, it's sandbagger law because of the way that they were able to manipulate perceptions concerning John Lennon. What they're after, of course, is a Hollywood boondoggle that refuses to recognize that I was victimized. Some of the sandbaggers, possibly to their credit, do realize that AIDS has to be investigated as an abomination. But because of their investment in political society, like the Black Panthers, UW dialectical Jill Stein of the Green Party, and most notoriously Israel Katz, they refuse to acknowledge what really happened to me, the impingements on the persona, the successive degradations of the X motive. What they refused, apparently they're psychologically so brilliant that they are limited psychologically. They can't perceive the idea that if there was a trap, it should be found out for the evidence of who made the trap. Instead, they say, no, the traps was justified, and we should punish the white by giving it disease. And Yoko Ono's in the background going, I want him diseased. I want him diseased. Ning Nguyen says, and he tried to blame Reagan when he could have saved John Lennon. The FBI are like, how perfect. So what happened? Now, how I got embroiled in that, clearly I didn't deserve that and wasn't looking for that. But the Jewish Israelis picked me. They called me chosen. And what chosen means is that nobody has to protect you from an arbitrary death threat. Because you've been chosen, Bob Ferguson will help them poison you. Because you've been chosen, Donald Trump will laugh at you. Because you've been chosen, Clint Eastwood will murder anybody who tries to help you. And this is the way it operated. So they tortured me and made me deaf. Now, because the Imperial Wizard has put a hex on sex, you're not allowed to have sex. If you had sex, you deserve to die. And this comes from the attorneys for hair, it comes from Yoko Ono, it comes from the Attorney General. If you had sex, you deserve to die. And the Black Panthers can't get enough of insinuating that somehow I was on the make. Because I was on the make, any girl I slept with was a lamb, and they should be avenged. And this is the way the people claiming to be rioters muddied the waters, muddied the tracks, stomped on the evidence, and made it impossible to understand what happened. What happened was I was very badly victimized. Didi Mansingh was a snuff film syndicate who was a starlet who was issued working papers by the union in Pittsburgh. Andrea Swimmer worked with Martin Andelman and Jaime Carbonell for Israel Katz in Pittsburgh for the Neva Corporation, working with Yoko Ono and Masako Shiono and David Myron. Masako Shiono, David Myron, and Ruth Hammer, were all together on Gail Burson's letters. And Peter Gabriel made it out that there was some unseemly bad feeling. I hadn't healed correctly, is how Bill Wheeler put it, from being rejected by Leslie Katz, who was an Israeli with kangaroo hair from Australia. You see, these were eugenicists. She was my girlfriend senior year, and she graduated valedictorian. Not to brag, just stating the facts. Okay, so we know what happened. I got a job as a deaf part-time library clerk, barely enough to keep myself, but I'm only half a man in those quarters because I'm deaf. A girl named Rosa came on to me. She was very beautiful. My co-worker, Wilma, was getting notes from me because I was deaf about things that we needed to do on the job, and she started asking about Rosa. And she got some racy comments about Rosa from me because I was suffering from pre-seizure trauma and starting to worry that this was yet another entrapment operation. I didn't yet realize that Rosa was there to cover for Gail Burson, that she was the fulfillment of Yoko Ono's curse, that she was part of a nightmarish two-version pussy ball game that was clocked to the AIDS attack, that she was building momentum with the Stranger newspaper and Dan Savage to help Israel Katz slaughter everyone in Gaza, and to cover it with the usual story about Jim. What a laugh it is to spy cam a deaf boy who we've been pimping on because they were pimps. And they were working through the union and the police services, and the FBI were all in on it. Oliver Stone was in on it with Cyril Weck. Peter Gabriel was in on it with John Schulman. Robert Fripp was on it with Israel Katz. They were all scheming. Roger Waters was one of the people who set me up with Rosa, for Rosa Clemente, because the Green Party knew that AIDS was man-made. Roger Waters knew. He was in on it. He was in on it before it started. Gaza, when he weeps for Gaza, is because he projects his sorrows of his childhood on Gaza. And he pretends to be mourning John Lennon because he's in a battle of spirits with the queer bait in Pittsburgh, who dared to think he could escape being chosen for the walrus. You're starting to see how these maniacs think. So the black community is inherently in a position of having victimized me, and that's not good. So they say I'm a liar, and that these are special services, this is therapy, that this was racial justice, that this was biological equity, that they deserved the play on Maduro Goto for Obama, the superior man. Did I ever run for president? No, I did not. What I did was I interfered with their plans for the story they wanted to tell about me by raising my profile just a little bit with articles like Murmur in the Cathedral and abolished the job description of the ritual descent of Peyton News in 1986. What did Rosa do? This one's a real laugh in the fraternities that produced the madness and fraternity of mayhem that lured me to Seattle so they could torture and poison me, for her husband, Chris of Duquesne. This is a real laugh. She fucked me into seizures. Isn't that a laugh? That's a scream. They called it watching the tea kettle go off. And guess what? Peter Sinfield and Peter Gabriel were going to get Michael Reagan's favorite scene. What's Michael Reagan's favorite scene? Oh, he comes like a worm. He angles from every direction trying to get his favorite scene. He starts saying that Saul Brecker, I didn't testify loudly enough at the principal's office. I didn't. And they start making up stories. Oh, I liked one of the black women who worked at the community college. Therefore, I killed her. Therefore, they go downtown. They're out to get machine guns out and kill white people because I liked. And no white person just waves innocently to a black one. She apparently got sick and died. It had nothing to do with me. It's obscene to suggest it had anything to do with me, but this is how their mind leapfrogs. And they make it stick in their heads. So they get to poison you in the mouth. And Bob Ferguson, the governor, is protecting them. He's guaranteeing them access to me, guaranteeing that he will enforce any psychological psychosis, any projection, any astral projection, any voodoo that Yoko Ono calls into their heads. Why? Because there's evidence that this guy killed my father. Solid, concrete evidence that should have been worked out and investigated and inquired about to determine who was responsible. But no, they want to Bob Ferguson wants to give access to me, physical access for torture and poison to the people who have already proven that they were planning a genocide. I put in Carnegie Mellon University's newspaper, Revenge for Auschwitz, that these people are planning revenge for Auschwitz. This isn't propaganda. This is in the record. Revenge for Auschwitz. Revenge for Auschwitz in 1994. It's confirmed. It can be proven that I warned about John Schulman again and again and again. What did they do? They supported him. They built momentum for him. They lied, and they said that because they lied, because they exploited me, because they used me in this monstrosity, pornographic genocide, therefore they are innocent and I am lying. Why? Because they are the people who are in power. And because they are in power, they get to do that and lie about it and get away with it. And that's common sense in their racket. And the stakes they jack up higher and higher and higher. They talk about a postcard from Robert Fripp. They talk about Queen Elizabeth's secretary. They talk about King Crimson payola at the casino. They talk about Frank Zappa's legacy. They talk about John Lennon. They come up with astral projections and dream of mountains of dough. And they say the only thing that's going to save your life, Queerball, is if you guarantee that you will give it to us. And for this, they refuse to warn, they refuse to protect the innocent people of Gaza. They refuse to take John Schulman off the streets where he was causing evil rumors to result in physical harm to an innocent person. They refuse to investigate. They refuse to connect the dots as a way of creating an alternative picture and telling people that they can only go by the numbers on the alternative picture. They took my life from me. I haven't seen Jeannie for 25 years. For a long time. It hasn't been 25 years, but it's been a long time. And when I did see her, it was only a couple of times when I was in Pittsburgh for a few years to go to school. After they banned me from school, do you see how the operation is designed to jeopardize your sin? It's beyond any form of gaslighting you've ever seen. And they create this illusion of mounds of dough so that nobody will ever do the decent thing and just straighten it out and get protection from abuse to a deaf person. They create this. Then maybe they have mountains of dough. Shulman maybe mountains of dough are at stake. Shulman had $8 million tucked away that he got from ripping off the museum, while they were telling me that for reporting him, I had to leave. This is the situation that mysterious Seattle engaged in when they sent this crooked girl to come and have a relationship with me for their production services. And Rosa, and the Rosa that she represented, and the Green Party that Joe Stein officially represented, when Robert Fripp claimed that he dropped his pick, so virginity proves right. These people are responsible for what happened to Gaza, because I was warning them in 1994 to put a stop to this syndicate that was Israeli who were behind the AIDS attack. And they said, no, you're just like your father. You're a closet racist. And they put don't know who on his obituary, German Green Party, and set up a pussy ball operation that would make the black people cheer the murder of a white liberal who was driving a school bus to make sure that their children arrived safely to school. And one of the cacklers behind the operation was typically for the logic of Seattle and the NAACP of Seattle, typical NAACP logic. They sided with a white racist who said, if you try to help black people, they will only turn on you. That's what he said to me. And they sided with him to prove that's not true, I guess. It's an absurdity wrapped in an obscenity, masquerading as a philosophy and factually guerrilla theater. And it's operating out of our main central public institutions like Pittsburgh public schools, like Sound Mental Health, like Seattle City Council. These are in Tacoma Police Department, maybe. These are the major public institutions. And these are the people who are operating this guerrilla theater mayhem tag team. And when I say pay me for my work and my injuries, I'm only saying something that's common decency. That's all. I know that you won't. I know that you say that I should be murdered for common decency. That's what you believe, that I should be murdered for common decency. That's what you believe. Deep in your heart, you believe I should be murdered for common decency. Deep in your heart. That is what you believe. Your whole heart. That's why you dropped your pick, Robert Fripp. Because you believe in your heart that anybody who has any shred of common decency should be murdered.